My name's Troy Meyerson. I'm a lawyer with Fraser Stryker in Omaha, Nebraska. Fraser Stryker has had the good fortune of being outside general counsel for OPPD since its formation, and I am your moderator today. We're going to start first by calling up each of the CEOs individually who have some PowerPoint slides to go over, and then once everybody's up, then we'll have some question and answer. So we're going to start with Mr. Tom Kent. Mr. Kent was appointed President and Chief Executive Officer in May of 2020 for NPPD. Tom graduated from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln with a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering in 1985 and a master's degree in business administration in 2005. He has also completed the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations Reactor Technology course for utility executives at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Leadership at the Peak, and holds certification as a situational leadership trainer. Mr. Kent is a registered professional electric engineer in the state of Nebraska, and he joined the district in May of 1990 as an environmental qualification coordinator at Cooper Nuclear Station. Mr. Kent also held the positions of retail district manager, retail regional manager, retail customer care manager, chief information officer, corporate planning and risk manager, and transmission and distribution manager. He was appointed a vice president in May 2011 and an executive vice president and chief operating officer in January 2020. Mr. Kent, if you would come up, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I kind of forgotten how hard it's been for me to hold a job, so at least it's all been with the same company. It's a pleasure to be here today. I love coming to this event. The team that puts us on does such a great job with it. It brings a lot of people together to talk about some really important issues. And this year is going to be significantly different from what's going on in our industry compared to what we've been saying in the past, because we are at an inflection point in this nation and in this state when it comes to load growth. And I'm going to talk about what NPPD is saying and how we're addressing it. And I'm sure you'll hear similar stories, but specific to their utilities from my colleagues, which will be up here shortly. All right, what's the forward button? There we go. Okay, so just briefly, we have over 6,000 megawatts of potential load that are looking to come onto NPPD's system, mostly through our wholesale customers, some through our retail communities. We've grouped it into groups. We have a process that we go through to try and understand the likelihood that these loads are coming. And for us, most of this load growth is related to the ag industry. It's related to what drives Nebraska's economy. It's things around hydrogen, clean fertilizer, what Monolith is doing, what Meadowlark is doing, projects that have been announced, ethanol industry, some data center. More of the data center development is happening in other parts of the state and other parts of the country. That's driving the load growth nationally. You hear about AI and data centers a lot. We see some of that, but most of ours is ag related. In the next 5 years, we're looking at 670 to 700 megawatts of firm load, and then as these other loads kind of get from ideas to reality, they'll start to move across on that list. Some of these loads are very large. I think you heard about a load yesterday, DG Fuels load, and how large that is. Over 1,000 megawatt load that's coming to Phelps County, Nebraska, potentially. Many of these new loads, whether they're data centers or whether they're ag-related, need clean energy. They want clean energy. Same information, this is in the slides, it's just in a pretty little bar chart, so I'll just get by it. So this is an inflection point for our industry. We have not in Nebraska seen this kind of load growth since the 1970s. And if you go back before that, the last time this kind of load growth was probably seen in the nation was after World War II and all the industrialization and all the rural electrification that happened post-World War II. In the 1970s, what was going on in Nebraska? Center pivot irrigation, primary driver for load growth. Air conditioning, more electrical industrialization. So if you look at NPPD's load characteristics for the past 20 years, we've grown at about an average of 1% a year. Pretty typical for any utility in the nation over the last 20 years. Now look at this year forward, what we're forecasting. We're forecasting growth at something close to 5% a year for the next 5 years, right? 3.8 times our historical growth rate. Not unique to NPPD. You're going to hear very similar stories from my colleagues. And if you read and keep up on what's going on in our industry in the nation, this is going on across the nation right now. There's a huge demand for electrification of other sectors of the economy, decarbonization. Electricity is driving all of that. For us, the bioeconomy initiative, you heard about it earlier, big drive. Full value agriculture, big drive. In addition, in the Southwest Power Pool, we all have to ensure that we work together to keep the lights on in the 14-state region. And part of how we do that is to assure that there's enough resources available to deal with emergencies, resource adequacy. So at the same time we're seeing this load growth, the Southwest Power Pool is reassessing how much additional resources they need from a planning standpoint that they ask all their load responsible entities to provide, like NPPD, OPPD, and LES. And they're increasing those thresholds. Right now, there's a summer resource planning reserve margin of 16%. That means each of us has to have resources available that is 16% greater than the expected peak we plan to serve. There's a new winter resource planning reserve margin requirement that will be going in the next few years. That's set at 36%. So for our winter peaks, we have to have planning resources that exceed what we expect to serve by 36%, okay? So in addition to the load growth, we're also having to deal with these reliability issues. So what happens if the utilities aren't able to do that? You build new generation. I'm going to talk to you about what NPPD is doing there. You buy and contract from other utilities. I'm going to talk about what NPPD is doing there, right? If you can't show that you can accomplish this, then you end up paying a penalty in the marketplace. That's the way the marketplace is set up. What if too many utilities can't accomplish either adding to their resources by buying or adding to their resources by building? What happens is the probability or the risk of having an hour or two or 4 or 5 or 6 hours that are unable to be served for the total load goes up. Doesn't mean that the total load won't be served. The total load is served in real time. So it means that the probability of having an event that causes some sort of response like we saw in Winter Storm Uri is going to go up, but it doesn't mean it has to happen, and it doesn't mean it will happen. It'll have a lot to do with the actual physics of what's going on in the system at that time. What resources are available, what transmissions available, all of those things. But the point of all this is to keep the probability of unserved customers acceptably low to ensure everyone can reliably get affordable energy. So NPPD, I said we got a 25% increase in our load. We plan in the next 5 years, we're going to increase our generation capacity by about 42% in that 29-30 time frame. We're focusing first on getting capacity resources. The SPP footprint is short on capacity, long on energy. We need the capacity resources to assure resource adequacy to keep the lights on. First and foremost, we're focusing on short-term purchases. We've to date got somewhere in the neighborhood of short-term purchases of about 200 megawatts to help us bridge to the resources we're building. We're negotiating for another 600 megawatts or so of short-term purchases. Again, a way to bridge resources until we can get our own iron and steel in the ground. Our board in the 24 budget amended the 24 budget to add 680-ish megawatts of new generation to our system. Internal combustion engines that use natural gas or diesel fuel, combustion turbines that use natural gas or diesel fuel. Our budget that we'll present in November to our board for approval includes another 630 megawatts of combustion turbines for our footprint. So we've got a capital plan that's going to build about 1.2 gigawatts of additional generation in the next 6 years or so. We're looking at potential energy resource additions to serve these new loads that need clean energy. We're working with one of our customers to hopefully bring some of this new ERA money into the state of Nebraska. As we look at these other large loads that are coming into the state, we're looking at somewhere between the neighborhood of 1,000 to 5,000 or so megawatts of clean energy resources that will need to be added to the system to serve their energy needs in our service territory. So, this graph kind of shows you our history. That orange line that peaks back in the 1979s, 1980s, that's the amount of debt we had to facilitate the construction of Cooper Nuclear Station, Gerald Gentleman Station, and all the big build out that we did in that time frame to serve the growing load. In 2024 dollars, over $8 billion of debt if you put it in today's money. With the capital program we're looking at for the next 5 years, about $3 billion of debt, you can see how it compares. My point is our industry has done this before. We've done it by banding together and doing what public power does really well, partnering to serve the people in Nebraska in an affordable and reliable way, and there's no reason we can't do that again today. Long term, couple things. Nuclear is part of our present at MPPD. It'll be part of our future. We're working hard to advance nuclear development in Nebraska. We're leading the study funded by the state legislature for preliminary siting. We're one of 21 nuclear operating utilities in the nation with over 50 years of experience of successfully operating a nuclear power plant. Gives us a great competitive advantage as we look to the future of nuclear power. Other things that we're working on, carbon capture. Does that make sense? Can it be economic at our power plants so we can keep these other kinds of fuels available in our diverse resource mix? And then further building out the combustion turbines we're using with steam turbines to make them more efficient over time. And you never know, maybe fusion will be there someday. It's always been 50 years away, 20 years away. Depends on who you talk to. Thank you. I'm looking forward to the questions.
That's great, thank you. Our next panelist is Javier Fernandez, President and CEO of OPPD. Javier has served as President and Chief Executive Officer of OPPD since 2021. He joined the utility in 2017 as Vice President and Chief Financial Officer. Mr. Fernandez came to OPPD from the Bonneville Power Administration, U.S. Department of Energy in Portland, Oregon. He had been with the Federal Power Marketing Organization since 2012, most recently serving as Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer. He previously served as Senior Vice President of Fixed Income Capital Markets for D.A. Davidson and Company and Vice President of Public Finance for Seattle Northwest Securities Corporation. He holds a bachelor's degree in economics from Instituto Tecnológico Autónomo de Mexico in Mexico City, a master's degree, I practiced that by the way, but clearly not enough. A master's degree in business administration from Yale University, and a utility management certificate from the University of Idaho. Please help me welcome Javier Fernandez.
Thank you so much. You get extra points for that, by the way. That was very well pronounced. I was talking to my wife a couple of weeks ago and I say, I'm gonna speak at the Wind and Solar Conference again. And it's the same panel we've done again. And I'm thinking, we need to come up with something new. And boy, do I have something new. And I think as Tom said, you know, I completely agree with you. We're in a pivotal moment. Paradigm is changing. And we in Nebraska are in a fantastic position to lead the nation. We are already leading the nation. The three of us just spent some time this past weekend with our colleagues, friends and colleagues, CEOs from large public power companies across the United States. And to me, I don't know if you agree, it was a proud moment to see that we all have challenges, but we are really leading in many, many ways in the nation. Let me start by talking about how hard has it been to do our jobs. Let me move on here. There you go, free advertising. Well, I can turn back to MPPD and say a bunch of other things. Hurricanes in the southeast. We heard from our sister utilities in the southeast and Hurricane Helene and Milton and the amount of devastation that happened. These 500-year storms that happen now every 2 weeks. We sent a lot of crews to help out. a lot of people, a lot of utilities sent us crews. At OPPD, on any given year, on average, we have less than 2. It's about 1.4 storms, major storms per year. That's what we average. This year we had 6. 6 major storms, in addition to all the other storms. In there, you had tornadoes ripping through Elkhorn and destroying hundreds of structures and homes. All the way to July 31st, where we had the worst storm on recorded history at OPPD, we lost more than 50% of our customers were without power after that storm. 221,000 meters without power, to be precise. This year too, and it's hard to believe that all of this is happening in 2024. This year too, earlier in the year, in January 16th of this year, we get hit by a polar vortex, really cold storm, negative 40 degrees outside. When the state needs power the most, it was really challenging to keep the power on, especially for us where the Missouri River all but dried up. We've been on a drought condition, and we are still in drought condition. This is something that worries me quite a bit. And water was not there, and the little water that was there, it froze. Our 4 units, coal units, we had to trip them. We didn't have enough water to operate them. The weather is changing on us. Someone said we're no longer talking about climate change. We're talking about climate changed. It already did. SPP, the Southwest Power Pool, is in conservative operations today, as we speak, from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. In October, late October, has always been a time for us to shut down our units, do maintenance, getting ready for the winter or the summer months. These are the easy months, the shoulder months, we call them. We're in conservative operations today. Today, the wind is very weak in the footprint. There's not a lot of wind generation. A lot of our units, thermal units, are offline, getting maintenance. And it's hot. Oklahoma City is projected to reach 87 degrees today, October 23rd. So things are changing. I would say that when I say that our jobs to keep the power on and lights on has gotten harder every single year, and that's an understatement. However, it's something that Tom and I talk a lot about, and Emeka, we probably agree with this. We got this. We got this. The power is on today. We have demonstrated time and again that we know how to do this. When the probabilities of outages go up, and we did have rolling outages with Winter Storm Uri, we kept the power on. We are professionals, and we'll always be doing what we do best, but it's getting harder than ever. I'll follow with another story, and then just a couple of slides. This past weekend in Omaha, we had the Exarban Foundation held an event, and they talked, and they did an in memoriam to one of the greatest leaders, business leaders the state has ever seen, and that's Mr. Bruce Lauritsen from First National Bank. Amongst the many things that were said about him, his son Clark, who's a good friend of mine, talked about how there was one time when First National helped out a competing bank in Nebraska who was having some financial trouble. And when Clark asked his dad, "Hey, Dad, why do you do that? They're a competitor." And Bruce said, "Because it's good for Nebraska. It's good for Nebraska." And that, to me, it was an inspirational moment to say this is exactly where we are today. Why are we all here? Oh, because we have businesses to run, because you're vendors, etc. But at the end of the day, we're here because what we do is good for Nebraska. It keeps people alive. It keeps businesses running. It keeps our future bright. Here's the new stuff that I want to talk to you today. We hear across the nation a lot of people talking and planning and saying, "Oh, we have a problem." Well, we've been doing this for a while, and today it is my pleasure to share with you that we've actually been doing stuff. In 2024, we have more than doubled our renewable portfolio for the Omaha Public Power District. We started the year with power purchase agreements of 977 megawatts of nameplate. We will end the year with 1,958 megawatts. We are doing stuff. Now, You can see here when we say we acquire existing facilities to the tune of 900 megawatts of nameplate capacity. That's the High Banks wind facility in Kansas, unfortunately. Thank you to the Kansas people, but it was in Kansas, not in Nebraska. We have a 300 megawatt facility in Milligan. It was existing wind. We're not injecting any new electrons there. Now, I'm very happy that we were able to get those contracts and we get to accredit this nameplate capacity for the benefit of our customers, but we didn't really build anything new. It was already there. We did build something new, and this is super important, so something that gives me a lot of pride, and there are a lot of people in the room here who have worked on this project for years, and this is our Platteview solar facility in Saunders County, 81 megawatts of nameplate capacity to total the 1958. We're doing stuff, and we're not done. This graph is, it's an eyesore, I get it. But it shows, I think, what Tom was talking about earlier, the challenges that we have, and I want to talk about how we got these. We're working towards these. On the left-hand side of the chart, you see our summer position for the state. On the right-hand side, our winter position. That dark line basically shows if we do nothing, the year that we will cross to be under the planned reserve margin that we're required. But that's important to say, if we do nothing. We are doing a lot. This is a snapshot in time that shows us, it tells our planning folks how hard we have to plan, when we have to put in new generation so that we never cross that line. It's a tool we use. But it's important because what you can see on the right-hand side is something new, something that we didn't have before, which is our winter peak load planned reserve margin. The Southwest Power Pool came to the realization that it's not just about the summer peak. Now it's winter too. So a couple of years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, they established a winter season. Just a few months ago, within that winter season, the planned reserve margin went from 16% to now 36%. It's still being debated, and it's still being kind of changed at some point, but it just shows that there's an added emphasis, as if the summer months were not challenging enough. Now there's an added emphasis to winter. What happens in the winter? It's solar generation accredits very little, if almost zero. We do have wind generation that accredits, but this is just responding to the fact that we need to keep the power on at all times of the year, and winter months are becoming very, very critical. This is what we have. How fast have things changed? You can see on the left side, it's our view of the world back in 2022. How cute. We thought it was going to be that. Just a year later, with all the load coming into our service territory, we had to revise our projections. What you see on the right-hand side was just a one-year change of how much load was coming to our service territory and how much the solid and dotted and red lines, that's what we have to meet. We always have to make sure that all of our resources are higher than those lines. Those planned reserve margins, as you can see that in the winter are getting harder to meet. We're building a lot, and we're not done. As I said, this is our 2023 peak, almost 2,800 megawatts at the summer peak load. This gives me a little bit of, I skip a heartbeat because I see we have more than that in requests. 2,821 megawatts. Just today in what we have, we know customers with name, last name, and location. There's a bunch more coming in. Data centers for sure. There's no doubt about it. But it's also manufacturing. A lot of it is related to the ag economy. Washington County Industrial Complex producing food and manufacturing food. Now you have the Fremont Inland Port Authority. There's a ton of growth in the nation. We are blessed with it, but it's a huge challenge. This tells me that if these projections are correct, I have to double the size of OPPD by the end of the decade, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're working really, really, really hard. We're facing some challenges. This is a great picture of us doing the ribbon cutting at our Platteview solar facility. I wish I had more news to share with you about more solar, more electrons coming to the grid today. We don't. Of the 13 counties that we serve in our territory, 5 of them currently have restrictions on siting of renewables. And I get it. It's hard, right? We need to do a better job, we as a utility, reaching out and finding compromises, understanding what is it, how can we work better together. Renewable generation takes a lot of land. Renewable generation today is probably the fastest generation that we can build to meet the needs of the state. We are building natural gas plants. We have 2 brand new natural gas stations that are coming online later this year. It's taken us 5.5, almost 6 years to get them online. We're working on new ones that now the time frame went from 6 years to 7 or up to 8 years of construction. Tom, you talked about small modular reactors or nuclear. That's even further out. All super important, super interesting technology, but I have needs to meet yesterday. This is where solar, especially solar generation, comes in incredibly important for our portfolio. Restrictions in one county can do and have cascaded into other counties. And this is really not a shot against the county commissioners. They're doing their job. We need to better understand what they need, getting at the table together and do what's best for Nebraska. Influence where we can. This is what we need from people in the room. We need sensible planning and zoning regulations throughout the state, not only for solar. At some point, we're going to need gas, pipelines. We're going to need siting for other generation. We're going to need it's all of the above. Yes, and so that we can continue to build and allow our communities to grow. I'm going to stop there because otherwise I could spend here many, many more minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Our next panelist is Emeka Anyanwu, CEO of Lincoln Electric System. Mr. Anyanwu became CEO of Lincoln Electric System, the municipal public utility serving Lincoln, Nebraska and surrounding communities in January 2024. Prior to LES, he served as Energy Innovation and Resources Officer at Seattle City Light, one of the nation's largest community-owned not-for-profit utilities. In that role, he was responsible for leading strategic functions that included utility technology, information security, electrification, grid modernization, and current and future power resource strategy. Earlier in his career, Emeka spent 16 years at Kansas City Power and Light in various roles, starting as a distribution engineer and moving into progressive leadership roles in T&D operations. Mr. Anyanwu, please welcome Mr. Anyanwu.
Well, thank you, Troy. Something that's interesting about me, actually in my family, I'm actually the youngest of 4 boys. So I have a lifetime of practicing how to follow my elders. But yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and be amongst all of you, really talking about, as Javier said, what's best for Nebraska. I'm new, as you heard in my bio, I'm new to LES, but certainly not to the Midwest. I have worked in the Midwest previously, started my career in the Midwest, went to college in the Midwest, was born in the Midwest. So definitely a lot of the values and principles that sort of underpin our culture here in the Midwest are very, very near and dear to me. It's also not lost on me, by the way, that the last 2 presentations, including mine, you've seen the word future, right? Mine says building the future. I think Javier said powering the future. But really, the truth is that the future is now. And we'll talk a little bit about that. There we go. So a little bit about LES and our generation mix. We casually reference that our mix is a third, basically third. The reality actually is that we're closer to an even split between renewables and natural gas. So about 35% each, and then about the remaining 31% is the part of our portfolio that's coal. And so that's something that really has transitioned. It's taken some work, quite frankly, to get to the level of diversity that we have in that portfolio, and it's something that we're really proud of. And you can see on the slide, one of the new things that we're starting to get into, like you've heard already, we have our community solar farm, and that's a picture of that on there. But LES has one of the most aggressive utility decarbonization goals in the country, right? Net zero by 2040. That's ambitious. It's certainly very forward-thinking, and is certainly something that can't be accomplished without being bold and without doing a lot of work. And we certainly recognize that we need to sustain our reliability and affordability as we do that. Again, as you heard from my peers on the panel. Going after a net zero carbon world and the move towards greater electrification is going to really challenge us to maintain that balance, to sustain those principles. But that's what we've committed to. And it's important to note that this also aligns with our community's interests expressed through the city's climate action plan. So that's part of the decarbonization at LES is a big part of that work. But as I said, the work has already begun. So you can see a trend line on here, really the good news, that we've already been on the path toward a net zero future. And you see the sort of line trending toward zero in 2040. We've added a bunch of renewable energy to our portfolio since 2010, right? Between 2010 and 2023, we've been able to reduce emissions, as you see on the screen, about 46%, and trying to exit coal-fired generation. But we have work to do, as I said. But here's what the work looks like. So show of hands, how many people in the room are here local to Lincoln? Okay, so thank you. You'll recognize I'm going to call them iconic because they're ours, the iconic wind turbines that were built on the northeast side of Lincoln. And earlier this year, we decommissioned those 2 wind turbines. Those 2 wind turbines were the first 2 in the state. They were LES's first step into wind energy. And what the work looks like is really sort of taking these thoughtful, measured steps to understand technologies that we want to bring into our portfolio and make them work on our system. And for many people, seeing those wind turbines come down probably provoked some mixed feelings. I think there were some feelings of loss, wondering, not only the landmarks that they are, obviously, but what they mean, what the decommissioning of those wind turbines means to LES's renewable future. And I'm certainly here to reinforce, and I think we shared this at the time, that the reality is those turbines did their job. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. They are the reason why you saw the 35% in our portfolio that you see today. We learned about how to bring wind technology online and bring it into our portfolio through that work. And we are very proud to have gotten to a point where they had served their useful life, and we were able to decommission them. And by the way, I'll just point out that the turbine blades themselves were recycled, as were most of the rest of the materials. So definitely a good story there. And what does it take for us to get to net zero? So our most recent IRP sort of generated the chart that you see on there. As you can see, we've got a chunk of that is unprescribed, about 200 megawatts of the gap, right? The goal is trying to remove coal from our portfolio, using sources that we have right now, gas, hydro, landfill gas, our sustainable energy program, which is our energy efficiency and demand response programs, as well as wind and solar. But again, right, none of that is done lightly. So when I talk about removing stuff from the portfolio, it certainly is not anything that we would do without being really thoughtful about how we do that. And certainly having the ability to consider the opportunity to deploy carbon capture might change that path. But we're evolving, right? So since that last IRP, we are already exploring the things that it will take to fill that gap, including the addition of solar that you see on, I guess, what is going to be my left, your right. So one of the big challenges, as you heard it from my colleagues up here, you heard it from Casey from SPP earlier, right, is the ways in which the market is evolving. So this is a really quick, we call it way too early estimate for LES of how this is going to affect us, right? And you can see now we're talking about capacity reductions in the winter, right? That are challenges that we haven't faced before. And our margins are narrowing, right? So in addition to those margins, as you think about what those reserve margins are, right? It is not just sort of the excess, it's also essentially the shock absorber for unexpected events, right? And so when you hear Tom and Javier talk about the possibility, right, of unserved load, that's the shock absorber, right? And what you can see is that we're losing some of that buffer, and that's something that is going to take a lot of work and intention for us to tackle. But as I'm going to steal again, learning well, being the younger brother, I'm going to steal from my colleague again. We've got this, right? The future of Lincoln's energy. So we are thinking about the diverse ways we're going to need to serve those needs, the needs of our community, right? As I said, the future is now. And part of that is going to be not just the resources we serve, but also the ways in which the architecture of the grid itself is changing. And the fact that it is becoming more and more clear that our customers want an opportunity to make their own choices about how their energy needs are served. And we want to make sure that we lean into that. But the future of Lincoln's energy includes continuing to invest in and expand our sustainable energy program, includes thinking about innovative ways to design utility rates so that customers get the right signals to help us manage our energy usage. As I said, the solar resource, which you saw on our IRP slide, and stuff that we are working on actively, as well as solar through our distributed resources. We just proposed in our most recent budget and rate proposal that goes to the City Council later this month. We just proposed the first multi-tenant solar tariff, as well as a new program for the renewable energy, basically. Blanking on my term, sorry. But anyway, it's a renewable energy standby. That's the word. New renewable energy standby program that will allow large customers as well to bring on large solar. So thinking about ways to serve that diverse load and allow our customers to make choices around how their load is served is important. And also, battery storage. So we've just gone under contract of Lincoln's first utility scale energy storage project. It's a 3 megawatt battery. The technology, EOS Energy Enterprises, is a zinc battery. And the idea is to again, be bold with a different technology other than sort of what is more commonly seen in lithium ion, right? But again, to bring something else into the system. And it also allows us to demonstrate a resiliency factor, because this is going to be attached to our downtown microgrid, which again is a really good asset. So it'll support the existing community microgrid and help us develop hands-on knowledge and expertise on how to operate the battery and how to make it fit on our system. Oops. And so also we have more solar on the horizon, as I said. We're doing the same with solar. We have 218 kilowatts of solar on our new campus on the southeast side of town. And as you can see, I'm fairly certain we are the only utility in the state that has solar in the shape of our logo. So we got that going for us. But no, again, this is, like I said, like I talked about with the wind turbines, right? This is how change happens. We certainly feel like we have the opportunity to, along with the rest of our colleagues in public power here in Nebraska, to show the rest of the country how it's done, show the rest of the country how to move forward. We look forward to doing the work. Certainly excited to be joining a utility in Nebraska at this critical juncture, this critical inflection point. And I think that we have every opportunity really to have a competitive advantage in the future of energy to come. And as I said, the future is now. So thank you.
Thank you. All of those presentations were great, very informative. Can we get these turned off? Yes, yes. All right, great. That was how I was going to interrogate you, Javier. All three of you had reserve margin in your presentations. So I'm wondering if one of you or several of you would want to talk about how wind and solar might be a part of how you might accomplish those changes in the reserve margin.
Would you like the older brother to start, and then the two younger brothers can correct me? It's all good.
You can also rock, paper, scissors if we're talking about brothers.
I've gotten very good at using the hand-me-down, so.
So reserve margin, as we all mentioned, the way SPP looks at it from a reliability standpoint is they start the discussion around planning reserve margin. There's a lot more complexity to that, and if we'll invite Casey back up to go through the details if you'd like. But it's really ensuring that there's enough buffer from a planning standpoint so that you can handle the realities of what happens during an operating day in the system. So wind and solar help. They help in a different way, though. Okay, so for like a thermal resource like Cooper Nuclear Station, the nameplate might say 800 megawatts. It has an accredited capability from a planning reserve and an operating standpoint to provide 800 megawatts of capacity because that's the characteristics of how that kind of unit works. Wind and solar, 100 megawatt nameplate wind facility, because of how wind works and it's intermittent from an operating standpoint, has maybe the accredited capability of 15%, give or take of that. So say for a 100 megawatt facility, it's 15 megawatts of value that you can use towards the reserve margin requirement. So it helps. Solar is the same way. Solar might be 20 or 25%, depending on where you're at and its history and operation, but it's the same kind of thing. A 100 megawatt nameplate solar facility might give you 20 or 25% credit towards what you could use to meet your reserve requirements. And it's really how those facilities operate. A lot of it has to do with the intermittency of the fuel, either wind or the sunlight, right? But you do get some value to meet your reserve margin requirements.
So just to add to that, very important. So this is capacity, right? You measure capacity on the hour of the day that you need it the most, when you have to have all of your resources on. That's incredibly important, and I completely agree with Tom. And there's also the energy part of it. I think this is a conversation that I can't have enough with people because it's hard to understand and it's really hard to explain it. But for example, at OPP, I'll give you a good example. At OPPD last year, August of last year, our board of directors approved a 2.5 gigawatt resolution, 2.5 gigawatts of nameplate capacity. Of that, 1 gigawatt was natural gas and 1.5 gigawatts was renewable. From a capacity perspective, you think, well, it's about 40% gas, 60% renewables. Yes, on the day that you need it the most, if you need to have everything on, that's the way the system calculates it. But then comes the energy piece, whereas year-round, those wind facilities, those solar facilities are going to be producing a lot of energy. They may not produce it exactly on the minute that you need it to get the accreditation. So when our teams ran the models, we realized that about 90% of the energy that portfolio was designed to produce, 90% of it was going to come from renewable energy. Super important. Even more important, the other 10%, which is when you need it the most, make sure that you have a machine and that you can turn on and that will be there and available when you need it the most. That's on the capacity side. So the planned reserve margin certainly looks at the capacity, and wind doesn't have that huge accreditation. It doesn't show up all the time when you need it the most, but it shows up a lot on the other side. So I think this is important for when people ask me, why are you building gas and why are you building solar and wind? It's because of those reasons. Right? It's because you need to take into account the energy that happens 24/7 and also the capacity where you need it the most.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tom and Javier have covered this well. Maybe one other thing I would add, and I'll use an anecdote from LES's portfolio as well to describe this. You know, folks who came before me, especially my venerable predecessor, Mr. Wales, who's right here up front and center, had the foresight to have LES participating in the Low Carbon Resource Initiative through the Electric Power Research Institute, right? And that's an initiative that is looking at sort of low carbon resources and what are the technologies, advanced technologies that will come to bear. But one of the interesting things in one of the first meetings of that initiative that I attended that they talked about was about renewables as what they call fuel-saving sources. So think of this, right? And you heard, again, both OPPD and NPPD have dual fuel resources, right? So natural gas or fuel oil. Why is that? Because your ability to run those resources potentially when you maybe don't have natural gas supply is really important. Now think of this, your ability to store fuel. So for us, we have a limited number of hours of fuel oil storage on site at our generating facilities. So if for some reason something were to happen, right, and we didn't have natural gas to run the facilities and we had to go to fuel oil, which by the way happened during Hurricane Uri, and you maybe had either interruption or some other constraint on your fuel supply, the ability to conserve those fuel molecules for the periods when you absolutely got to have them becomes really, really important. And so the energy thing that Javier just talked about all of a sudden winds up potentially being your saving grace because as we were all saying this weekend at the event that the three of us were at, you can break a lot of laws, never can break the laws of physics.
So I think we're done here at 1 o'clock. So we've got about, I'm going to say five minutes or less left. So I'm going to ask each of you just to tell the audience what do you want them to take away from today? And so that's sort of question one. Question two is how can they help? And I'll start with little brother.
Oh boy, I never get this. I think for me, the takeaways are hopefully what you've heard from us is public power in Nebraska is a unique, it's a unique legacy and one that is invaluable, something that is worth preserving. And because of that, we can do this. We can do the job, right? If we stay true to what we've valued and what we've built in our great state, we can do the job. But it's going to require all of us doing the job. It's going to require all of us sort of leaning in and recognizing that we need every electron we can get, right? From every source, right? There is no value to determining villains and heroes, no value to looking for winners and losers, right? That's not what this public power legacy was built on, and it certainly won't do the job for us today. So hopefully that's what you're hearing from us.
Thank you for that. I think that's super important, the winners and losers, right? The data centers versus the ag, the coal versus the solar. Our job is to keep the light on, the power on for every single customer that comes to the state of Nebraska. We have an obligation to serve, and we will do that as the way we've always done. I'm very proud that last year we were #1, this year we're #2 in the nation for reliability. The most reliable states in the nation, one of the most affordable states in the nation. We have a secret here in Nebraska that obviously got out because people are coming in. When we're seeing other utilities on both coasts that are losing businesses, guess where they're coming? They're coming here. They're bringing taxes, they're bringing jobs, they're bringing prosperity. And I think that's our job is to continue to do that in the most positive way. We got this. We're professionals at doing this. At OPPD, we've been doing this for almost 80 years, and not myself. But we got this, and we need the community. You're gonna see us in your coming to a theater near you soon. It sounds like that. You're gonna see us building stuff in your communities. You're gonna see us replacing transmission lines in the middle of the city of Omaha. It's not popular. You're gonna see us building new generation, which we are. You're gonna see us trying to build new generation, whether it's solar, wind, gas, whatever it is. We need you to understand why we're doing this. These are not nice to haves. These are must haves for the future and the prosperity of Nebraska. Again, we got this. We'll continue to work really hard on these. And we need the community to know and support us. When you see us going out and knocking on doors and saying, hey, we're about to build something new, call us. We're more than happy to come in and explain and share what we have going on. The last thing that I need to say is I just need to get Kevin's secret to see what do I need to do to be called venerable when I retire.
All right, Kevin, we're waiting for the answer to that. So I'm gonna pick up where Javier and Emeka are both going, and that's really engage. Public power is unique in the United States. You heard earlier today the history, and a lot of it started right here in Nebraska, thanks to Senator George Norris. We're invested in helping our communities be successful, and it's a partnership that involves not just the three of us up here, but all of the other municipalities and utilities in the state that are engaged in public power. We work together to provide affordable, reliable electricity to the people of Nebraska, and another word hopefully you don't miss is we are at an inflection point in Nebraska and an inflection point in the nation in terms of the energy transformation that's going on for the better. And I hope you heard it earlier when Julie was talking about the bioeconomy initiative and the opportunity for this state to grow together and bring and lead the next generation of fuel and food supply for this country and potentially the world. That's the opportunity that's in front of us working together. So engage. Public power is us. It's everyone in this room that either is in the industry or a customer of the industry, which is everyone in this room. Engage. Help us together create the future that's best for Nebraska, and it takes all of us working together. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. This has been very informative. It's an exciting time for this industry. Thanks everybody for joining us. And if we could please thank our panelists for a great discussion.